Hello, in this video, we're going to be talking about the skull. So let's not wasting your time. Let's get right to it. Now, when we're thinking the skull, what we want to think about, and as I referenced in the first video, that the skull has a lot of bones, and you can see 22 bones make up the skull, and you would think, man, alive, 22, how in the world? But we'll talk about each of them. But more importantly, with this video, the way you're going to want to approach this is you certainly want to capture the information that's going to be displayed on the screen. The other way to think about, or we're going to approach this video, is that a lot of it is just vocabulary type information, or matching, not matching, not the right word, but it's like these are the names of these bones which you will need for both the identification, kind of the lab identification aspect of it, and as well as the multiple choice test. You will just need to know their names and be able to identify their position on the skull and each of the bones. So a lot of it's going to be just where is it and what's its name, which isn't a lot of explanation, especially on the skull, because the bones don't actually do anything. They're just there at a particular position. So a lot of this will just be the notes that you need, and me just kind of pointing out where some things are. But I certainly don't need to read to you or just point to things that are obviously, where they are. We'll do a lot of that aspect of it in the individual day 2 activities with these. So there won't, in some slides or some screens, there won't be a lot being said, but you'll just need to pause it because it will obviously move on. You'll just need to pause it when you capture the information. So don't assume that just because I'm not talking about something or I don't say much on that particular screen that it's not as important. It's just the fact that it's just general information that's either just a name or a vocab type thing, and there's no real explanation, so there's no reason just to read it to you. But so don't assume length of words coming from me is an indication of the importance of what's going on. But now back to the skull. As I mentioned, 22 bones. 8 of them are bones that wrap around the actual cranial cavity where the brain sets. So just think the general body of your skull is divided up into 8 different bones, and of course those bones are connected by sutures, and of course the formation of those bones creates multiple cavities, and a lot of it has to do with sinus and the nasal cavity and of course ear forming around on the sides as well. But a lot of structure involved when we're talking about the skull. All right, some more aspects of the skull to consider. You can see there the sinuses kind of in the center of the large cavity there, kind of underneath the brain, but still a part of, kind of between the eyes, above the mouth, that area there, and we're all familiar with the nasal cavity and the connection between the ears and the mouth. One of the things that I didn't mention, and I should have, when we were looking at the general structures of the skull, or the bones that are kind of, or the skull I should say, that are kind of similar. I didn't mention foramens, or in this case you can see on the screen foramen if there's plural. But those are also small holes. They're also holes, I should say, just like not a process, but an orbit and a cavity. But they're small holes. It's almost like little drill holes in the skull or various aspects of bones, and those are designed very specifically to be passageways for blood vessels and nerves, those kind of things to get. And of course, for the blood vessels, you're going to have an in and an out, since they cannot travel in the same veins, capillaries. But they're just very small holes. So anytime you see the word foramen or foramina, as you can see there, that's plural, you're thinking passageway for blood vessels and passageways for nervous tissue, or just nerves in general, that we would have talked about way back in the second unit. But there's also bones that support the teeth, 14 bones in there, the mandibles, and various things like that. Here's a look at kind of all the cavities and orbits, and again I compared orbits and cavities. Cavities certainly are typically much larger, and then orbits are areas that I mentioned that are formed by the structure. And then you can also get a good look at the cavities, and of course anything that that you need to identify for the lab settings, you will have those papers for. So it's not like you think, okay, I better memorize all that stuff. It's certainly useful information, but we will go over each of those, and you can kind of see the color coding of the bones. That's going to be key as we go through this lecture and the other lectures, video lectures, that the color coding aspect will be a help to, not breathing properly, as I should say. But those are the structures there, and again, anything in lab that we need to go over, we will go over. Alright, so more about the cavities. This one is pretty interesting. Yeah, I apologize for the delay there, that I had to do some editing on the next slide. I didn't have my screen, my area set kind of the way I needed it to. But the cavities, as we mentioned, the skull itself does a lot to help with that. As you're looking down into a skull there on the left-hand side of the diagram, you can kind of see those little sections that the brain sets into. That's obviously purposeful and helpful to help kind of hold the brain in place and to keep it kind of in its place and protect it as much as possible. But also those areas that set into those particular sections, they're the ones that are most vulnerable to injury, in concussion settings, because they're the ones that actually are pressed or slammed into bone material. I mean, if you get hit in the front, obviously that section of the brain would be, or if you take a helmet to the side or to the top or to the back, those areas can be. But just in overall general, if you're in your car and maybe you're in a car accident and you don't really hit anything, but the sudden jerk of you against your seatbelt or maybe into an airbag, those areas can be vulnerable to or susceptible to injuries because they're up against those bones. But you can see on the far right what kind of sets in each of those areas, and that information is listed on the screen as well. So you want to be sure to capture that. But the skull does a good job, and it's partitioned and sectioned to where it does kind of keep that compartmentalized in certain areas, almost like a carton of eggs. It's designed to be kind of wrap around the bottom half of the egg, and in the top part when it closes, keep them from being able to kind of jump out, or if it's shook or dropped or whatever. But again, just like a dropped carton of eggs, there's only so much the container can do to prevent that. But you can see the sections there, and again, that's listed in the written part. And again, a potential test question may be, okay, the cerebellum, what part of the skull area does the cerebellum set into? What part does the temporal lobe set into? That kind of stuff. So you want to be sure to capture that information. All right, next up for us is the frontal bone, and this is where we're going to kind of get into the part that where it's information is listed, and there's, as you can see, 6 things there, but there's not a lot of explanation. It's more about, okay, where is it and what's it called, and then that's it as far as the information. So you want to be sure to capture that. But a few things to point out as we look at our skull, and we will look at this skull, from the front view, the side view, the top view, and then of course the cutaway cross-section view as we look at the inside on a regular basis. But the frontal bone, this is the peach colored one that's right there at the top. It's got the whole forehead section, and you can't tell it from this angle, but you'll see it in the next one. When we look at the paranteal bones, that it doesn't go all the way back. It only goes back an inch or two, and you have the first suture, the coronial suture that separates the frontal and the paranteal as far as going backwards. And of course there's a sagittal suture that separates the two sides of the parental. Excuse me. And I said parental, I meant paranteal. It's easy to move that in upwards a few letters and mispronounce, but paranteal is the peach colored structure. Okay, again, and this is the paranteal bone, and you can see the side view and the top view. The top view, the paranteal, you can see the right and left with the sagittal suture in between. And then you can see the side view. The paranteal is the pinkish kind of color there, and again, it's got sutures that separate the sides on the side. Okay, it's got the suture there below it, and of course that's the corneal, and the lambda. It's back here in the back, separates it from the occipital bone, but those are the major sutures. And again, multiple choice questions all over the place. And as we talked about many times, this is why we use our notes on the test as opposed to note cards, because there's just so much information that you would have. Oh man, you might have as many as 15, 20 note cards if we did it that route. Alright, now looking at the temporal bone, and again that's the same view along the side. The temporal is the blue. You can think about where your temples are, right here behind the eyes. It's that blue area. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm out. I'm thinking ahead of myself. Temporal is the purple. The blue is the sphenoid. I got ahead of myself there a little bit. The temporal is the purple. I apologize for that misidentification. The temporal is the purple area. I touched temple, but then I looked at the picture and showed the wrong one. I thought, wait, that's not right. That's brought about the change there. But that's the purple. Again, the condyle back here in the back. Further clarification, you can see the words zygomatic process there and mandibular fossa. They're kind of the same area, and they actually are touching. But the zygomatic process is that purple part that kind of extends below the blue section, and it reaches up and touches the light blue section over there, which is zygomatic bone. That's the process. The process is a word that is used in this case when one bone touches the other bone, just like a process for your scapula. It reaches in and touches The arm, the upper bones, is a way of connecting, and of course it's held in place there with tendons and cartilage and stuff. But it's fused on the one end with the zygomatic bone. Fused is not the right word. There's a suture that it connects the two. And in the mandibular fossa, that's a little curved area that the mandible sets into so it can rock. But the fossa, again, another word of things that are kind of similar. It's not necessarily a hole, but it's just an area to where you can sit in there and rock as it needs to. Okay, some more part of the temporal bone is the stuff around the ear, the tympanic part. That obviously is a reference to ear. The external auditory meatus, and meatus is a word, it was also, I should have mentioned when we were looking at the structures, but meatus is sometimes around a bone, especially if it's around an orbit or an opening of some kind. There's kind of a buildup, like a thickness of the bone. That's the meatus part. It's like the meat of the bone, the thicker part. And you can see that. Get the mastoid and the mastoid process. Again, if you see the word process, it's a reference to an extension of a bone that then is sutured or fused or a part of another bone. And of course, the mastoid process is the kind of inner ear part. When a little child gets an ear infection, or it can be an adult as well. Mastoiditis, that happens in that mastoid process, of those cavities back in there. And of course, you've got foramens, you've got notches. Again, foramen is that reference to an opening, like a little drill hole, where neurons, nerves and blood vessels and things can go into. All right, so a little bit more about the temporal part. It is a part of the cranial floor, as you can see. Not so much the side, but you can see on the inside it does wrap up to kind of help form some of those compartments where the brain sits. And you can see that kind of, it goes inward and then back up to form a kind of wall. So it's like almost a horseshoe type. What's up against the skull and what's up against the brain. And then there's the little valley that brings that back. Oh, I just realized I'm not in the screen here. Sorry about that. I didn't notice that when I was putting it together, but I'll scoot over here. Oh, it's this way. There I am. I'm kind of behind there. It must have jumped on me somehow. But again, you can see meatus, you can see canals, you can see foramens. Those are all words that we have touched on. So just be sure that you recognize what those are. Foramens are those little drill bit holes for blood vessels and nerves and stuff. And of course, the meatus is that thickened area around an opening, just to help it give it more bulk and structure. All right, and so just the last little bit of the temporal bone, you can see that it's got a diagram there where, again, it shows you in the upper left-hand corner of that picture. But just the various variations on the parts, or the various parts to it. Again, the words are small, but it's in our book. It'll be in the PowerPoint. If you look at that, you'll see that as well. But that's the idea, the temporal bone. All right, the occipital bone. So now we're in the back, so you know we're getting close to the end. Although we still have 5 more slides, 5 more screens to go to. But the occipital bone back here in the back, it's the green area there. And of course, a part of that, its big foramen, is what allows the the vertebrae, the spinal cord, to reach up into the skull area and bringing that. And of course, that foramen is what allows you to kind of rotate rounds, again, just kind of connected by cartilage and tissue and tendons and stuff. But again, various canals and things. Anything jumping out at me that I want to talk about? No, but we will, like I said, in the day 2 activities in the labs. Just be sure you capture the information, even if you have to pause it and then restart it once you're done. All right, next up, the sphenoid bone. This is the bone that I misidentified earlier as the temporal. But this is, again, you can see that's the blue, and you can see the inside view. It's the stuff right in here between the eyes, reaches up in between the eyes. So all this that you can fill in here, that's sphenoid bone. We're setting into the eyes. You can see it's kind of a flat little cup shelf. Obviously, that's where the eyes and those muscles associated with that would set. The two things to distinguish here, and which we probably won't get to do in lab because most of the plastic models don't showcase these, but the greater and lesser wing. You can see the sphenoid is kind of like almost like a wings point out there. That's the greater wing, and then right above there, looking very similar to what might be longhorn cattle. Those horns look like the kind of horns that are associated with the University of Texas. That's the lesser wings. All right, the sphenoid bone continued. Again, rotundum, no more openings. Ovals, no more openings. And the medial and the lateral plates, those are interesting. You can see those at the bottom of the picture on the very top. So I got the wings out there, the greater wings. Just below that, there's like two little processes and almost spine-like the medial. But that's the lateral and the medial, but again, you can see them here, but not likely that in a lab setting we'll be able to showcase those because they're just not made to be completely accurate as far as all the parts. All right, and again, you can see the sphenoid bone there, the blue section there, and that brings us to slide 14, where again, more sphenoid bone. Again, just the various plates and everything. Yeah, I think I goofed on my... Yeah, I think I got out of line on my transition there, so probably just take that section out, which you'll never know, I guess. Now, the next one, the ethmoid bone. That's the part that's right between the eyes. Take these off. That's the part in here between the eyes. And you can see that it's the light blue, the light bluish section there. The orange is kind of a round. It's kind of a two section. The peach on the top, the light blue, helps to make those walls not only up here, but it kind of houses the nasal cavity and things like that. But the perpendicular plate is a little bit thicker, or it has 2/3 of the nasal area, but a little bit thicker to accommodate that. All right, more discussion on the ethmoid bone. Again, pictures are kind of small, but you can see them in your book or the PowerPoint. But the Cribmore plate is like that top little section above the what we call the wings or the lattice areas. The labyrinth, kind of get into the tunnels and can't find your way back out, that kind of labyrinth. But that's the idea of the ethmoid bone. All right, so again, kind of wrapping up, here's an overall look at everything. Again, the color coding, and again, we'll talk about all these in our day 2 activities in our labs. And there'll be some days where we even, once you're done with the video lectures and the reading guide and the quiz and the little questions, that we'll get out the materials. And I know early on, and especially the chemistry chapter, the class didn't really always go to the full length, but there will come a time when that starts to happening, and during the bones and muscles, we certainly will be needing all the time that we have. Well, that's our video over the skull, or skull part 1 anyway. There's a part 2. So next time we get together, we're talking about part 2 of the skulls. We'll see you then.